They tell you the scar will fade. The doctors, the nurses, the well-meaning aunts who bring casseroles covered in tin foil, they all say the same thing. Give it a year, honey. It'll just be a thin white line. You won't even know it's there. I touched the spot on my side this morning, just right there below the rib cage. The skin is still angry, still raised. It's a jagged, pink reminder of what was taken out of me. But they were wrong about the fading. See, the physical scar, that's the easy part. That's just skin and muscle knitting back together. The body knows how to forgive a knife. But the heart doesn't have stitches strong enough for what happened to me. I gave my sister, Emily, my left kidney. I laid down on a cold operating table, counted backward from 10, and willingly gave away a piece of my own life so that she could keep living hers. I thought I was saving her. I thought I was being the good big sister, the protector, the one who fixes things. I didn't know that while I was asleep, sliced open and vulnerable, the two people I loved most in the world were already beginning to cut away something else. Something I couldn't regrow. I saved her life. And in return, she took mine. Let me take you back to before the silence filled this house. Before I flinched every time my phone buzzed. My life was warm, that's the best word for it. It wasn't perfect. No life is, but it was warm. I was 28 years old, working as a landscape architect, which is just a fancy way of saying I liked making things beautiful and orderly. I liked structure. I liked knowing that if you planted a seed in good soil and gave it water, it would grow. Simple, reliable. And then there was Mark. Mark was the kind of man who felt like a Sunday afternoon. Easy, comfortable. We had been together for 4 years, engaged for 1. He was an accountant, steady, logical, the ground to my slightly chaotic clouds. We were deep in the middle of wedding planning. I can still smell the vanilla cake samples we tasted that Tuesday afternoon, laughing because he had frosting on his nose and didn't know it. "I don't care about the napkins, Sarah," he'd said, grabbing my hand across the table, his thumb rubbing over my engagement ring. "I just care that you're walking down that aisle. The rest is just noise." I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He looked at me like I was the only person in the room. Then the phone call came. It was my mother. Her voice was high, tight, the sound of a woman holding back a scream. Emily had collapsed at work. Emily, my little sister. She was 24, vibrant, the fun one. If I was the landscape architect planning the garden, Emily was the wildflower that grew wherever she pleased. She was chaotic, beautiful, and fragile. She'd always been fragile. Growing up, if there was a flu going around, Emily caught it twice. If there was a scraped knee, hers got infected. I spent my childhood defending her, sharing my toys, giving her the bigger half of the cookie because Emily needs it more, Sarah. That was the mantra of our household. Emily needs it more. At the hospital, the fluorescent lights hummed with that terrible, headache-inducing buzz. The doctor looked tired when he told us. End-stage renal failure. It had been coming on silently, hiding in her blood work until her kidneys just quit. She needed a transplant. The list was 5 years long. She didn't have 5 years. She barely had 5 months. I didn't even look at Mark. I didn't look at my parents, who were clinging to each other in the corner of the waiting room, weeping softly. I just rolled up my sleeve. "Test me," I said. The doctor looked at me, surprised by the speed of it. "Miss Miller, it's a major procedure. You need to think about—" I said test me. She's my sister. It wasn't bravery. I don't want you to think I'm trying to paint myself as a saint. It wasn't courage. It was instinct. You don't think about the water temperature when you see someone drowning, you just jump in. The testing process was grueling. Weeks of blood draws, scans, psychological evaluations. And through it all, Mark was my rock, truly. He drove me to every appointment. He sat in the waiting rooms, holding my purse, reading stale magazines. I remember one night, about a week before the surgery, I had a panic attack. The reality of it hit me. I was voluntarily letting someone cut me open. I was sobbing on the bathroom floor, unable to breathe. Mark came in. He didn't say a word. He just sat down on the cold tiles next to me and pulled me into his chest. I could hear his heartbeat. Solid. Steady. "You're the bravest woman I know, Sarah," he whispered into my hair. "I am so in awe of you. You're saving her. You're a hero." "I'm scared," I choked out. "What if something happens to me? What if I leave you alone?" He pulled back and looked me in the eyes. "You aren't going anywhere. We have a wedding to plan, remember. I'm going to be right there when you wake up. I promise." Emily, for her part, was terrified too, but she was also ecstatic. The sickness had made her skin gray, her eyes hollow. She looked like a ghost of the sister I knew. But when the match was confirmed, a perfect match, the doctors said, almost like we were twins, she cried tears of pure relief. "I don't deserve you," she told me the night before the surgery. She was sitting in her hospital bed, looking small. "Sarah, I'll never be able to pay you back. Never." I squeezed her hand. Her fingers were cold. "You don't have to pay me back, Em. You just have to live. You just have to come to my wedding and dance. That's the deal." "I'll dance," she promised, a weak smile touching her lips. "I'll be the best maid of honor in history. I'm going to throw you the biggest party. I'm going to make sure Mark treats you like a queen." She looked over at Mark, who was standing by the window. He turned and smiled at her, a warm, reassuring smile. "I already treat her like a queen, Em." "You better," she teased, "because she's saving my life." The morning of the surgery was a blur of antiseptic smells and beeping monitors. They wheeled us down together. I remember looking at the ceiling tiles rushing by, feeling Mark's hand gripping mine so tight it almost hurt. "I love you," he said, kissing my forehead right before the doors to the pre-op area swung shut. "See you on the other side." I looked at Emily. She was already sedated, looking peaceful. I took a deep breath, the anesthesia mask lowered over my face, and the world went black. I went to sleep thinking I was doing the most important thing I would ever do. I went to sleep certain of who I was and who loved me. I woke up in pain, sharp, blinding pain that radiated from my side. But beneath the pain, there was relief. I did it. We made it. But as the fog of the anesthesia lifted and I squinted into the bright recovery room, something felt off. Mark wasn't there. I blinked, trying to clear my vision. My mother was there, sleeping in a chair. My dad was pacing the hall, but the chair next to my bed, the one Mark had promised to be in, was empty. It was a small thing. A traffic jam, maybe. A bathroom break, a phone call. But lying there, helpless, unable to move without agony, a tiny, cold seed of dread planted itself in my gut, right next to the empty space where my kidney used to be. Mark finally walked through the door 20 minutes later. He had a cup of hospital coffee in one hand and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. When he saw I was awake, he rushed over, but the energy was different. It wasn't the frantic relief of a fiancé seeing his future wife open her eyes. It was distracted. "You're up," he said, kissing my cheek. His lips felt dry. "Sorry, I wasn't here. I was down the hall." Emily woke up early. "The doctors were explaining her meds, and your mom was overwhelmed, so I stepped in to take notes." It was a good excuse. It was a noble excuse. How could I be angry? How could I be the selfish woman demanding attention when he was helping my sick sister? So, I swallowed the disappointment. I swallowed it just like the dry pills the nurse handed me a moment later. "Is she okay?" I rasped, my throat feeling like sandpaper. "She's amazing, Sarah," Mark said, and his face actually lit up. A genuine light this time. "Her color is back already. It's like magic. You literally gave her life." I tried to smile. I really did. But my side felt like it was on fire, and I was so tired. "That's good," I whispered. "That's all that matters." Recovery was brutal. No one tells you that the donor often has a harder time than the recipient. My body was in shock. I had lost an organ. I was sluggish, bloated from the fluids, and in constant, dull pain. I couldn't stand up straight for 2 weeks. I shuffled around my parents' house, where we were both staying to recover, in oversized sweatpants, hair unwashed, smelling like antiseptic and sweat. Emily, on the other hand, Emily blossomed. It was almost supernatural how fast she bounced back. With my kidney filtering her blood, the toxins that had weighed her down for years vanished. Her skin turned rosy. Her eyes sparkled. She gained weight in all the right places. She had this frenetic, joyful energy, like someone who had just been let out of a cage. And Mark was mesmerized. It started slowly. Subtle things. Things you can't complain about without sounding crazy. I spent most of my days in the guest bedroom, trying to find a comfortable position to sleep. Mark had taken 2 weeks off work to help us, but I noticed he wasn't spending those hours fluffing my pillows or fetching my water. I would hear them downstairs. The laughter. That was the first thing that started to grate on my nerves. I would be lying upstairs, staring at the ceiling fan, aching, and I would hear Mark's deep, booming laugh followed by Emily's high, bright giggle. They were watching movies. They were cooking lunch. They were bonding. "I'm just keeping her company," Mark told me one afternoon when he came up to bring me soup. The soup was lukewarm. "She has so much energy, Sarah. She wants to go for walks, but your mom's knee is acting up. I told her I'd take her around the block." "That's nice of you," I said, adjusting the ice pack on my side. "I wish I could go." "You need to rest," he said, patting my leg, a platonic pat, the kind you give a golden retriever. "You look exhausted. Just sleep, babe. We've got this." He and Emily were the we. I was the patient. I was the invalid. 3 weeks post-op, the first real crack appeared. I had finally managed to shower on my own and put on real clothes. I wanted to surprise Mark. I felt human for the first time since the surgery. I walked slowly down the stairs, gripping the banister, listening to the silence of the house. Mom and Dad were at the grocery store. I walked toward the kitchen, but stopped when I heard voices in the living room. "Stop it, Mark." Emily was laughing. "That tickles." "Hold still, I'm trying to see the scar," Mark said. His voice was low, playful. I froze. My heart hammered against my ribs right where the empty space was. I stepped into the doorway. They were on the sofa. Emily had her shirt pulled up slightly on the side, showing the incision site where they had placed my kidney. It was healing beautifully. Mark was leaning in close, his face inches from her skin. His hand was resting on her waist, just a little too firmly. When he saw me, he jumped back like he'd been burned. "Sarah," he said, his face flushing red. "I didn't hear you come down." Emily yanked her shirt down quickly. "Hey, sis, Mark was just comparing. He wanted to see how mine looked versus yours, to make sure yours is healing right." It was a lie. I knew it was a lie. You know when the air leaves a room, when the atmosphere shifts from comfortable to sharp. "My scar is upstairs," I said, my voice trembling. "If you wanted to compare, you could have asked to see mine." I didn't want to wake you," Mark stammered. He stood up, wiping his hands on his jeans. "You've been sleeping so much lately, we didn't want to disturb you." "I haven't been sleeping," I said quietly. "I've been waiting for you." There was a silence then, a heavy, thick silence. Emily broke it by jumping up. "Oh my God, Sarah, don't be weird," she said, rolling her eyes. The old Emily, the bratty little sister, flared up. "He's your fiancé, he's just caring about us. You're being super sensitive. Is that a side effect of the meds?" She made me feel small. She made me feel crazy. And Mark, he didn't defend me. He didn't say, "No, Emily, don't speak to her like that." He just looked at the floor and said, "She's right, Sarah. You're overreacting. We're just family here." Family. That word used to mean safety. Now it felt like a trap. That night, Mark went home to our apartment for the first time since the surgery. He said he needed to check the mail, water the plants. He said he'd be back in the morning. I lay in bed in my parents' house, the pain in my side throbbing in rhythm with my heartbeat. I called him at 9 p.m. to say goodnight. No answer. I called at 10 p.m., straight to voicemail. I called at midnight. Nothing. At 1 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Mark. "Sorry, babe, fell asleep on the couch, exhausted. Love you." I stared at the screen. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him. But then I saw the notification from Instagram. Emily had posted a story. I clicked on her profile. The little circle spun, and then the image loaded. It was a photo of 2 glasses of wine and a plate of fancy cheese sitting on a coffee table. The caption read, "Celebrating new life with my favorite people. Cheers to second chances." It wasn't the wine that stopped my heart. It wasn't the cheese. It was the coffee table. It was my coffee table. In my apartment. The one Mark was supposed to be at alone. I zoomed in on the corner of the photo. Just barely visible, reflected in the wine glass, was the sleeve of a blue flannel shirt. I bought Mark that shirt for Christmas. I sat there in the dark, the phone glowing in my hand, and I realized the surgery hadn't just taken my kidney. It had started a hemorrhage in my life that I didn't know how to stop. There is a specific kind of madness that comes when your gut tells you one thing, but your heart begs you to believe the opposite. I stared at that Instagram photo until my battery died. I analyzed the reflection in the wine glass like a forensic scientist. I told myself, maybe he just forgot to tell me. Maybe she stopped by for 5 minutes. Maybe I am the crazy one. But pain has a way of clarifying things. The next morning, I waited until my parents went to the pharmacy. I grabbed my car keys. I shouldn't have been driving. My incision was still pulling tight every time I twisted my torso, and the doctor had said no driving for 4 weeks. It had only been 3, but I had to see. I drove to our apartment, my apartment, the one I paid the deposit on, the one where I had picked out the curtains and the rug. When I unlocked the door, the air hit me. It didn't smell like my home anymore. It smelled like her. My sister wore a very specific perfume, vanilla and sandalwood. It was heavy, sweet, the kind that lingers in a room long after the person has left. The living room was thick with it. I walked in, my hand pressed against my side to support the stitches. The living room looked normal at first glance, but then I saw the details. The throw blanket on the couch was folded in a way I never folded it. There were 2 coffee mugs in the sink. One was mine, one was Mark's. I walked to the bedroom. The door was open. The bed was unmade, sheets tangled, pillows thrown on the floor. And there, on my nightstand, sitting right next to the framed photo of Mark and me from our engagement, was a silver hair clip. It was shaped like a butterfly. I knew that clip. I had bought it for Emily for her birthday 2 years ago. I picked it up. It felt cold in my hand. I was standing there, holding the evidence of my sister in my bedroom when the front door opened. "Sarah!" It was Mark. He walked in, holding a bag of groceries. When he saw me standing in the bedroom doorway, his face went pale. Not the pale of a worried lover, but the pale of a man caught. "What are you doing here?" he asked, dropping the keys on the counter. "You're not supposed to be driving." I held up the butterfly clip. "Why is this here, Mark?" He froze. For a second, I saw the panic in his eyes. Then I watched him do something terrifying. I watched him compose himself. He took a breath, adjusted his glasses, and the panic was replaced by annoyance. "She forgot it here last night," he said, his voice level. "She came over to drop off some mail you got at your parents' house. She was upset, Sarah. She was having a meltdown about the anti-rejection meds. She needed someone to talk to." "In our bedroom?" I asked, my voice shaking. "She needed to talk to you in our bedroom?" "No," he snapped. "She used the bathroom. She probably left it on the sink and I moved it. Jesus, Sarah, look at you, you're trembling, you're paranoid." "I saw the wine," I said, "on Instagram. A celebration." "We had a glass of wine." Mark threw his hands up. "Is that a crime? Your sister is alive because of you and you're acting like a warden. She's been through hell. I'm trying to support her because you can't right now. I'm doing your job for you." That hit me like a physical blow. "I'm doing your job for you." "I can't do my job because I cut a piece of myself out for her," I whispered. Mark softened then. He crossed the room and took my shoulders. "I know, babe, I know, and that's why you're acting like this. It's the trauma. It's the hormones. You're not thinking clearly. Emily loves you. I love you. Do you really think we would do that?" He looked me in the eyes. He looked so sincere, so hurt that I would even accuse him. And because I loved him, because I was weak, because I had a wedding dress hanging in the closet, I let him convince me. I apologized. I actually apologized to him for suspecting him. I went back to my parents' house. I swallowed the doubt. I buried it deep down in the dark, right next to the scar. 2 weeks later was the engagement party. It was supposed to be just an engagement party, but my parents had turned it into a Sarah and Emily recovery celebration. A double feature. The venue was a beautiful garden restaurant. Fairy lights, white tablecloths, an open bar. I wore a loose-fitting cream dress that hid the swelling on my side. I felt faded. That's the only way to describe it. I felt like a watercolor painting left out in the rain. Emily arrived late. When she walked in, the music seemed to stop. She was wearing a red dress. Tight, strapless, vibrant. She looked like a movie star. She was glowing with health, my health. She was radiating life. Everyone rushed to her. "Look at you. It's a miracle. You look amazing." I stood by the buffet table, holding a glass of water, watching. Mark was by her side instantly. He put his hand on the small of her back to guide her through the crowd, presumably. But his hand lingered. His fingers splayed out, possessing the space. The night went on. The speeches started. My dad gave a tearful toast about family sacrifice. He called me an angel. Everyone clapped. Mark squeezed my hand, but his eyes were scanning the room. Around 9 p.m., I started to feel dizzy. The noise, the heat, the fake smiles, it was too much. I needed air. I slipped away from the main tent and walked toward the back of the garden, where there was a small gazebo hidden by rose bushes. I just wanted 5 minutes of silence. I heard the voices before I saw them. "You have to tell her, Mark. I can't keep pretending." Emily's voice. Not the bratty sister voice and not the sick patient voice. A woman's voice, demanding. "Not tonight, Em. Look at her. She's frail. It would kill her." "Mark," I stopped. The gravel crunched under my heel, but the music from the tent masked the sound. I stepped behind a trellis covered in ivy. Through the leaves, I could see them inside the gazebo. They were standing close, dangerously close. "I don't care if she's frail," Emily hissed. She grabbed Mark's lapels. "I'm not going to watch you marry her, not after what we have. You said I was the one, Mark. You said I was the one you should have been with all along." My blood ran cold. The world tilted on its axis. Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know what I said, and I meant it, but we have to be smart. We have to wait until the wedding gets closer, find a way to call it off without making us look like monsters. She just gave you a kidney, Emily. We can't just dump her 3 weeks later." "So we lie." Emily stepped closer, pressing her body against his. "We lie to the woman who saved my life. We're protecting her," Mark said. "For now." And then he leaned down. He didn't hesitate, he didn't pull away, he kissed her. And it wasn't a quick, guilty kiss. It was hungry, it was familiar. It was the kiss of 2 people who had been doing this for a long time. My sister, my fiancé, the 2 people I had built my entire universe around. I felt a sharp, ripping sensation in my side. It wasn't the stitches tearing. It was the last thread of my life snapping. I stepped back, my heel catching on a stone. I stumbled, gasping for air. Mark's head snapped up. He looked toward the darkness where I was standing. "Who's there?" I didn't answer. I turned and ran. I ran back toward the lights, back toward the party, back toward the crowd of people who were celebrating a family that didn't exist anymore. I burst into the main tent, breathless, sweating, my face ghost white. The music was playing a love song. My mother saw me and smiled, waving me over. "Sarah, come here, we're about to cut the cake." I looked at the cake. It had a little plastic bride and groom on top. I looked at the entrance to the tent. Mark and Emily were walking in. Mark looked flustered, smoothing his tie. Emily looked triumphant. She saw me staring at her, and for a split second her mask slipped. She didn't look guilty. She smirked. It was a tiny, imperceptible lift of the corner of her mouth. A look that said, "I have your kidney, and now I have your life. And there is nothing you can do about it." I walked over to the microphone stand where the DJ was set up. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely grip the metal. "Turn it off," I said to the DJ. "What? Turn the music off." The silence that followed was instant and deafening. Every face turned to me, my parents, the guests, and Mark and Emily, who had frozen halfway to the table. I took a deep breath. It hurt. Everything hurt. "I have an announcement," I said into the microphone. My voice echoed through the garden, hollow and strange. Mark's eyes went wide. He started to step forward, his hand raised in a stop motion. "Sarah, wait." "No," I said, my voice rising. "I don't think I will. They say that when you're in a car accident, time slows down. You see the glass shattering in slow motion. You see the dashboard coming toward you. Standing on that stage, looking down at the sea of confused faces, time didn't just slow down. It stopped. I looked at Mark. He was frozen, one foot on the stair leading up to the platform, his hand reached out as if to grab the air. I looked at Emily. She was pale, her hand covering her mouth, her eyes darting around the room to see who was watching. Everyone was watching. I didn't scream, I told myself. Do not scream. Screaming makes you look crazy. Screaming makes you look like the hysterical woman they were already trying to paint me as. I brought the microphone closer to my lips. The feedback whined for a second, a sharp screech that made everyone wince. "I want to thank everyone for coming," I said. My voice was steady. It didn't sound like my voice. It sounded like a judge reading a verdict. "We're here to celebrate recovery, and we're here to celebrate a wedding." I paused. I looked directly at my parents. My mother was smiling uncertainly, clutching her purse. My father was frowning, sensing the tension in my shoulders. "But I think there's been a mistake," I continued. "See, I thought the wedding was for me. I thought the man standing right there." I pointed a shaking finger at Mark. "It was my fiancé." Mark lunged then. He scrambled up the steps, his face twisted in panic. "Sarah, stop, you're not well, put the mic down." He grabbed for my arm. I stepped back, swift and sharp, and he stumbled. "Don't touch me," I said into the mic. It boomed over the speakers like thunder. "Don't you ever touch me again." The crowd gasped. A low murmur rippled through the tent. My father stood up, knocking his chair over. "Mark, what is going on?" "She's having an episode, Frank," Mark yelled, turning to the crowd, sweat glistening on his forehead. "It's the medication. The doctors warned us about psychosis. Sarah, honey, come on, let's get you to the car." He was good. He was so good. For a second, I saw doubt in my mother's eyes. I saw pity in the guests' faces. Poor Sarah. She gave her kidney and lost her mind. I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "I'm not crazy, Mark," I said. "And I'm not hallucinating. I just came from the gazebo. I heard you." The color drained from Emily's face. She stood up, knocking her water glass over. "Sarah, please." I ignored her. I looked at the crowd. "I heard my fiancé telling my sister that he loves her. I heard my sister." I choked on the word, the pain briefly breaking through my armor. "I heard the sister whose life I just saved, begging him to leave me. But you know what the best part was?" I looked down at Mark, who was now staring at me with pure hatred. The mask was gone. "He said they couldn't dump me yet," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that echoed in the silence. "Because it would look bad. Because I just gave her a kidney. They were going to wait. They were going to let me plan the wedding, let me heal, and then discard me when it was convenient." "That's a lie," Emily screamed. Her voice was shrill, desperate. "She's lying. She's jealous because I'm getting all the attention." "Jealous?" I asked softly. I reached down to the hem of my loose dress. And right there, in front of 70 people, in front of my grandmother, in front of my boss, I pulled the fabric up. I exposed the angry, red, jagged scar on my side. The staples were still in. The skin was bruised and swollen. "I let them cut me open for you," I said, looking directly at Emily. "I lay on a table and let them take a piece of me to keep you alive. And while I was bleeding, you were sleeping with him." The silence in the tent was absolute. You could hear the wind rustling the canvas. You could hear the distant traffic. Then my mother screamed. It wasn't a word. It was a wail. She collapsed into my father's arms. My father, a gentle man who had never raised a voice in his life, looked from me to Emily. His face turned a color I had never seen before, a dark, purple rage. He walked over to where Mark was standing on the stage. Mark put his hands up. "Frank, listen, it's not what it—" My father didn't punch him. He just shoved him. A hard, two-handed shove to the chest that sent Mark stumbling backward off the riser. He landed hard in the grass. "Get out!" my father roared. "Get out of here!" Mark scrambled up, adjusting his suit, looking around for an ally. He looked at Emily. Emily was standing alone. The guests near her had physically backed away, creating a circle of isolation around her red dress. She looked small. She looked terrified. I lowered the microphone. My adrenaline was fading, and the pain in my side was coming back, sharp and blinding. I walked down the stairs. I walked past Mark, who wouldn't meet my eyes. I walked past Emily. She reached out a hand. "Sarah!" I stopped. I didn't turn to face her. I just spoke to the air. "You have my kidney, Emily. You can keep it. I can't take it back." I took a shuddering breath. "But you don't have a sister anymore. That part of me, that's gone. You killed her." I walked out of the tent. I walked through the garden, past the gazebo where my life had ended, and out to the parking lot. I got in my car. I locked the doors. And for the first time in 6 weeks, I screamed. I screamed until my throat tasted like blood. I didn't go home. I couldn't go to the apartment, and I couldn't go to my parents' house. I drove to a cheap motel off the highway, the kind where the neon sign buzzes and nobody asks why a woman in a cocktail dress is checking in alone at 10 p.m. I turned off my phone, but before I did, I saw the notifications piling up. 50 missed calls from Mom, 20 from Dad, 12 from Mark, none from Emily. I lay on the lumpy mattress, staring at a water stain on the ceiling. I touched my scar. It throbbed. I wondered if Emily's scar was throbbing too. They say twins have a connection, a phantom pain. We weren't twins, but we shared blood. We shared an organ. Did she feel my heart break? Did she feel the severance? The next morning, the reality set in. I was homeless. I was single, and I was still recovering from major surgery. I turned my phone on. The first voicemail was from my father. "Sarah, we're at the house. Mark is gone. We told Emily to leave. Please come home, baby. We love you. We're so sorry. We didn't see it. We didn't see it." He was crying. I drove back to my parents' house. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw black trash bags on the front lawn. I got out of the car, moving stiffly. My dad was standing on the porch. He looked 10 years older than he had the day before. "What's this?" I asked, pointing to the bags. "Emily's things," he said. His voice was hard. "I told her she isn't welcome here." I looked at the bags, clothes, books. The stuffed bear I had given her when she was 5. "Where is she?" "She went to Mark's," Dad said, spitting the name out like poison. She admitted it, Sarah, after you left. She told us they've been talking for 6 months, even before the diagnosis. 6 months before the surgery. Before I saved her. She knew she was stealing my fiancé, and she still let me get on that table. She still let me slice myself open. "I'm sorry, Dad," I whispered. He came down the steps and hugged me, careful of my side, gentle as if I were made of glass. "Don't you dare apologize, not you, never you. but the drama wasn't over. It was just shifting from the personal to the public. Because small towns talk, and wedding guests talk. By Monday, everyone knew. I went to the grocery store to pick up my prescriptions. The pharmacist, Mrs. Gable, looked at me with wide, pitying eyes. "Oh, honey," she said, sliding the bag across the counter. "I heard about the party. Is it true about the. "It's true," I said flatly. "Well," she leaned in, lowering her voice. "You didn't hear it from me, but Mark came in here this morning, trying to fill a prescription for Emily. And I told him our system was down," she said, a grim smile tight on her face. "I told him he'd have to drive to the next town over. I've known you since you were in braces, Sarah. I'm not serving that traitor." It started like that, small acts of solidarity. But then Mark and Emily made a mistake, a big one. They tried to control the narrative. Mark posted a long, rambling status on Facebook. He wrote about how the heart wants what the heart wants, and how sometimes true love is messy. He tried to paint me as the neglectful partner who was emotionally distant during the wedding planning, pushing him into Emily's arms for comfort. He cast himself as the victim of a loveless engagement and Emily as his savior. He forgot one thing: people aren't stupid. And he forgot about my cousin, Jenna. Jenna is a lawyer, a shark, and she was at the party. When she saw Mark's post, she didn't just comment. She declared war. There is a specific kind of justice that doesn't happen in a courtroom. It happens in the grocery store aisles, in the church pews, and in the comment sections of social media. Mark thought he could write his own story. He thought that if he used words like soulmates and destiny, people would forget the math. But people are good at math when it involves betrayal. My cousin Jenna didn't scream. She didn't use all caps. She just posted a screenshot of Mark's "The heart wants what it wants" post, and she added a simple timeline. August 12. Sarah begins compatibility testing for Emily. September 15. Mark and Emily are seen at the Blue Bistro, receipt attached from a friend who waited on them. October 1. Sarah undergoes nephrectomy surgery. October 3. Mark misses Sarah's post-op recovery to help Emily. November 10. Sarah finds Emily's hair clip in her bed. Jenna captioned it. "The heart didn't want what it wanted. The heart wanted to use my cousin for parts before discarding her. This isn't a love story, Mark. It's a harvest." That phrase, a harvest, went viral in our little town. Mark deleted his Facebook account 3 hours later, but the damage was done. He was an accountant at a local firm. Small towns trust their accountants with their secrets. By Wednesday, 3 of his biggest clients had pulled their files. His boss, a man who had known my father for 30 years, called him into his office and told him that his personal judgment was reflecting poorly on the firm's reputation. He was put on indefinite unpaid leave. And Emily? My mother told me this part, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and grief. Emily tried to go to her favorite coffee shop. The barista, a girl Emily had gone to high school with, took her order in silence. When she handed Emily the cup, she had written something on the side in black marker. It didn't say Emily. It said thief. Emily ran out of the shop crying. You might think I felt happy about this. You might think I sat back and drank champagne while watching their lives burn. But I didn't. I felt heavy. I looked at the empty space in my parents' house where Emily's pictures used to be. Mom had taken them all down, and I just felt a profound waste. All that love, all that shared history, incinerated for a cheap thrill. But there was one final battle left. The apartment. Mark was still staying there. And I knew because my neighbor Mrs. Higgins told me that Emily was staying there too. My name was on the lease. I had paid the security deposit. I had paid the last 3 months of rent while Mark was saving for the honeymoon. I called Jenna. "I want them out," I said. "Legally, you have every right," Jenna said, her voice crisp. "I've already drafted the eviction notice, but Sarah, do you want to be there? I can handle it." "No," I said, touching the scar on my side. It was healing into a silver line now. "I need to reclaim my space. I need to close the door." We went on a Saturday morning. Me, my dad, and Jenna. I used my key. The lock turned with a heavy click. The apartment was a mess. Boxes were everywhere. Mark had clearly seen the writing on the wall, but they were still there. Mark was sitting on the couch, head in his hands. Emily was in the kitchen, wrapping plates in newspaper. When we walked in, the air left the room. Mark stood up. He looked terrible. Unshaven, dark circles under his eyes. He looked like a man who had realized the grass on the other side wasn't greener. It was just painted dirt. "Sarah," he said, taking a step forward. "Look, we're leaving. You didn't have to bring reinforcements." He glared at my dad. My dad just crossed his arms and leaned against the doorframe, a silent sentinel. "I'm not here for a chat, Mark," I said. My voice was calm. The shaking was gone. "I'm here to make sure you don't take anything that isn't yours." "It's just stuff, Sarah," Emily snapped from the kitchen. She sounded brittle. "God, you're so petty. You ruined the engagement party, you turned the whole town against us, and now you're worried about a toaster." I walked over to the kitchen. I looked at my sister. She looked healthy. Her cheeks were pink. She was vibrant. My kidney was working perfectly. "I'm not worried about the toaster, Emily," I said. "I'm worried about the principle." I looked at her hand. She wasn't wearing a ring. Mark hadn't proposed to her. Of course he hadn't. Men like Mark don't marry the mistress. They just use them as a life raft until they find the next ship. "Where is it?" I asked Mark, turning back to him. "Where is what?" "The ring," Mark scoffed. "That's mine. I paid for it." Jenna stepped forward, adjusting her blazer. "Actually, under state law, an engagement ring is a conditional gift given in contemplation of marriage. Since the marriage did not occur due to the donor's fault, that being you, Mark, and your infidelity, the condition is broken. The ring belongs to Sarah." Mark's jaw tightened. "I don't have it. I sold it." "Liar," I said. I walked past him straight to the bedroom, the bed where I had found the butterfly clip. I went to his sock drawer. Mark was a creature of habit. He hid everything in his sock drawer. Cash, passports, secrets. I pulled open the drawer. There, tucked inside a rolled-up pair of gray wool socks, was the velvet box. I took it out. I opened it. The diamond winked at me, cold, hard, indifferent. Mark stood in the doorway, defeated. "I needed the money, Sarah. I'm on leave. We have nowhere to go." "You have a healthy girlfriend," I said, snapping the box shut. "And she has a healthy kidney. I'd say you're rich in resources." I walked back to the living room. "You have 1 hour to get the rest of your things and get out. If you're not gone, Dad calls the sheriff." "Sarah, please," Emily said, coming out of the kitchen. Her voice cracked. She looked young suddenly. "I don't have anywhere to go. Mom and Dad won't answer my calls. My friends won't talk to me. I'm scared." She reached out a hand, the same hand I used to hold when we crossed the street. "You saved my life," she whispered. "You can't just throw me on the street." I looked at her. I really looked at her. I searched for the sister I had loved. I searched for the girl I had split cookies with. But all I saw was a stranger who happened to have my blood type. "I didn't throw you on the street, Emily," I said softly. "You walked out the door the moment you touched him. You made your world small. You have to live in it now." I turned to my dad. "I'll be in the car." I walked out of the apartment. I walked down the 3 flights of stairs. I sat in the passenger seat of my dad's truck, clutching the ring box. And then I watched. I watched from the window as they came out 40 minutes later. Mark carrying 3 suitcases. Emily carrying a box of kitchenware. They didn't look at each other. They weren't holding hands. They loaded the car in silence. Mark got in the driver's seat. Emily got in the passenger seat. As they drove away, Mark stared straight ahead. Emily was looking out the window, crying. They were together, finally, and they looked absolutely miserable. I took a deep breath. The air tasted like autumn, crisp, clean. The infection was gone. The wound could finally start to close. It's been 8 months since that day in the parking lot. 8 months doesn't sound like a long time, but when you're rebuilding a life from the foundation up, every day counts. I sold the ring. I didn't keep the money, though. It felt tainted. I used every penny of it to pay off my medical bills from the surgery, and the rest I donated to a dialysis center in the city. The same center where Emily used to go 3 times a week. It felt like closing a circle, a final act of grace for the girl she used to be, not the woman she became. Mark and Emily didn't last. You probably guessed that. Relationships built on deception are like houses built on sand. The moment the tide comes in, the foundation dissolves. I heard from a friend that they moved to a city 2 hours away. The pressure of being the town pariahs was too much. But the isolation didn't bring them closer. It just gave them more room to blame each other. Mark blamed Emily for ruining his career. Emily blamed Mark for ruining her family. They broke up 3 months after they left. Mark is apparently single, working a lower-level job. And Emily? I got a letter from her last week. It was in a plain white envelope. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. It was shaky, but familiar. I didn't open it for 3 days. I just let it sit on my counter, staring at it while I made my morning coffee. Part of me wanted to tear it up. Part of me wanted to burn it, but curiosity, or maybe hope, won out. I opened it. It wasn't a long letter. It said, "Sarah, I know I have no right to write to you. I know you probably hate me. You should. I hate myself. The doctors say my numbers are good. Your kidney is working perfectly. Every morning I wake up healthy, and every morning I remember why. I look in the mirror and I see you. I see what I took from you. I'm alone now. And I'm realizing that being alive isn't the same thing as having a life. I had a life with you and Mom and Dad, and I threw it away for a fantasy. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I am sorry. And I wanted to say thank you, because even after everything I did to you, you are still the reason I'm breathing." I read it twice. I didn't cry. I think I'm done crying over Emily. But I did feel a shift. A loosening of that tight knot in my chest. I didn't write back. I'm not ready for that. Maybe I never will be. Forgiveness is a journey, not a destination, and I am still just putting on my shoes at the starting line. My parents are doing better. We have Sunday dinners again, just the 3 of us. The empty chair is still there, but we don't stare at it as much anymore. We talk about the garden. We talk about my work. We talk about the future. And as for me, I'm dating again. Nothing serious. Just coffee. Just learning how to trust someone else with my time, if not my heart just yet. But the biggest change isn't in who I'm dating or where I'm living. It's in how I see myself. For a long time, I looked at this scar and I saw victimhood. I saw a mark of stupidity. Look at what you gave, the scar said. Look at how they tricked you. But yesterday, I went swimming. I put on a two-piece swimsuit. I walked out onto the pool deck and I felt the sun on my skin. I looked down at that jagged, silver line on my side, and I didn't see a victim. I saw a woman who loved so fiercely, so completely, that she literally gave a part of herself to save someone else. The fact that they didn't appreciate it, that's on them. That's their tragedy, not mine. My capacity to love, my capacity to give, that is my strength. They took my kidney. They took my fiancé, but they didn't take my heart. They couldn't touch that. It's still beating. It's still whole. And it's mine. We often think that being betrayed makes us fools. We think that because we didn't see the knife coming, we were blind. But I want you to know something. If you have given everything to someone, your time, your money, your heart, or even your body, and they threw it back in your face, that is not your failure. You are not broken because someone dropped you. You are precious because you were willing to fall. I have to live with a scar on my body for the rest of my life. It will never go away. But I would rather be the woman with the scar than the woman who caused it. I can sleep at night. I can look in the mirror. Can they? I want to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me in the comments. If you were in my shoes, if you received that letter from a sister who stole everything from you, would you write back? Is there a statute of limitations on betrayal, or are some things simply unforgivable? I'm still deciding. Maybe you can help me. Thank you for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to tell, but speaking it out loud, it feels like finally taking a full breath. Until next time, keep your hearts open, but keep your eyes open too. Take care of yourselves.